Now, over the last 4 years, Amanda Knox has been called evil, sinister and a witch. Her trial for the murder of poor Meredith Kircher provoked a media storm. By turns, we were fascinated by the woman the tabloids called Foxy Knoxy and loathed her at the same time. The men involved in the case got comparatively scant attention. So, what does the way we treat women accused of appalling crimes say about the rest of us? Amanda Knox walked free from court into a media storm in Italy this week. At the same time, her co-accused walked out with barely a light bulb flashing. Why do we have such a fascination with women who are accused of violent crime? Even if, like the nurse recently accused of the saline murders, the charges are eventually dropped. Perhaps this is because of its relative rarity. After all, more than 90% of murder charges are against men. Or is it that we still have an old-fashioned view of women as the gentler sex? Any deviation is seen as monstrous, and more monstrous than if a man had committed the same crime. Many were more horrified by Myra Hindley's crimes than Ian Brady's. Was that unfair? Or, as Hindley suggested herself, were her crimes actually worse because she was a woman, and that helped her manipulate and coax their victims?
She's coming down the stairs.
Amanda Knox is set to make a small fortune after her release. Fair compensation, say her supporters, for a wrongful conviction and years in prison. But what does it say about us that we remain so fascinated by her story? You can join in by webcam, or you can make your point by phone, by text, by email or online. Donna, are we guilty of demonising these women?
I think as a society we probably are, and I think it's a trait of human nature because we associate women with nurturing, with giving birth to children. We expect women to be more caring. They have less testosterone, which is the aggression hormone, which means that most of our criminals are men in terms of aggression and violent acts. Therefore, when it happens, because it is so rare, it gathers more of our interest and animosity. And yes, I do think we come down on them like a ton of bricks.
Amy, do you agree?
I would agree with that, and I think that the Amanda Knox case is
very worrying.
Yeah, particularly interesting because it happened in a country that, let's face it, is not known for its progressive sexual politics. And, you know, we saw the police, even in the investigation, making comments about her, about the way she swiveled her hip to sort of like put on some kind of shirt that they gave her to wear, and they said that they quite fancied her. And, you know, Amanda Knox has... She's in a difficult position, obviously. She's attractive, yeah, which immediately makes the media take interest in her. She also has a very expressive face, so that we really see her emotion in every little, you know, flick of the eyelash or, you know, with her mouth. You know, these kinds of things will count against her, and they have counted against her in the prosecution. They've used these things to say,
but
she
maybe
looks
doing
guilty.
cartwheels in the police station was not really in her best interest. She's a very strange character anyway.
Derek, not necessarily even focusing on Amanda Knox, but generally, when we look at women accused of appalling crimes or in some cases convicted of them, do we treat them differently?
I do think we treat them differently, but I don't think we demonise them. I think sometimes we actually glorify them. I think the whole thing of Amanda Knox is that, you know, I mean, Amanda Knox. I mean, Raphael, who's Raphael? What's his second name? You know, nobody's quite sure who he is really. But she got all the publicity, and I think it was to do with the fact that she was a young woman. She was attractive. She had all the bit about the sex was thrown in and everything else. But I do think we treat people differently. I mean, one of the great examples I think is, for example, if a male school teacher is accused of assaulting or having sex with a young girl in his school. He is a pervert, he's disgusting, he's a straight hanging. If actually a woman teacher has sex with a young boy, first of all, the women say, "Ooh, lucky girl."
No, Derek, she goes to court as well. She loses her job.
We're talking about murder here.
In the main, there is a complete difference in the way we approach them.
Let's talk to a criminal defence lawyer, Nicola O'Connor. Nicola, are women treated differently to men when it comes to crimes?
Well, in my experience, and I've been doing this job for some 11, 12 years now, I don't think that they are by the courts, but I've been listening to what your guests have been saying, and I think that they very much are treated very differently by the media. We have to remember that women are a very small proportion of those that come before the criminal justice system, and for types of offences like these, they are even smaller in number. And the things that hit the media are always the extreme examples of things. They aren't the more usual things. I mean, for example, if somebody gets killed following a fight in a pub, although it's awful for the families involved, people can understand how it might happen. When you're talking about a killing that involves a sexual element, though, my experience is that both the men and the women are very much vilified by the public, demonised, and there is a lot more of a media frenzy that's attached to it. The only thing that I would say about the Amanda Knox case that really struck me when I was listening to some of the people in the media talking about it was that they were particularly saying that the Knox family were very much courting the media and keen to get the media involved, whereas other people were not. And I think that does make a difference in my experience. When I have had cases that have been in the public limelight, it has tended to be cases whereby one side or the other is feeding a lot of information to the media.
Nicola, can I ask Nicola
it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. Nicola, can I ask you about the media? Because the media frenzy around Amanda Knox now returning to the States and being a heroine and superstar and book deals, whereas the Kircher family has just been left in the lurch. Do you not blame the media for fanning the flames to this?
Well, in my experience as a defence solicitor, things become quite difficult once the media become involved, particularly whilst a case is going on, because there are two trials going on then. There's one going on in the media and there's one going on before the court. And the facts that arise in both places are not necessarily the same. The facts that the media decides to choose to highlight and those that might have been highlighted in the court are not necessarily the same. And so things often become very, very confused and very, very difficult.
Nicola, thank you. Mark Brooks is from Mankind. Just going back to women accused of similar crimes to men, I mean, your organisation supports male victims of domestic violence, some of which will be carried out presumably by women. Are the penalties for women as severe as they are for men accused of exactly the same crime?
Well, we don't think there are, because we find that far fewer women are actually prosecuted for domestic abuse than men, even though obviously more men actually commit domestic abuse against women than the other way round. And certainly some of the sentences that we've seen where basically the cases were attempted murder, we've seen small sentences, 5, 6, 7 years, and the perpetrator is going to be out in 3.5 years. Now, we feel that if you reverse the genders, the sentences would be far worse, and that is a problem because it sends out all the wrong messages, not only to male victims but also those who carry those crimes out.
So, Mark, if the question we're asking, do we demonise women accused of violent crimes? Your answer is not only do we not demonise them, but that they should be treated harsher. That we should perhaps demonise them more.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. I mean, what we really do want in this country is equal justice, and to ensure that justice is blind. So I'm not saying that females who carry out violence should be more harshly treated than men. But our concern is that at the moment there is an equality in this area.
I actually agree with Mark. There is a kind of underlying social prejudice here that women couldn't possibly beat up men, and some women can. And, you know, so this is another prejudice that society has to recognise and deal with.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful here, though, because, I mean, there is no excuse whatsoever for a man ever to beat up a woman in a relationship like that. No excuse whatever. Oh, fine, you can say that there's no excuse for a woman not to beat up a man, but it is different, of course. I mean, I'm sorry, Mark, it is different because, you know, the reality is the reason why it is fundamentally wrong for a man to beat up a woman is because generally they're stronger, they're different, they're actually, they have an advantage to a form of bullying. The other way around isn't.
Hang on, because that is an important point, and I know Mark will have an answer to that.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, Derek, that's nonsense. I mean, you've got to get at, one of the important things is to try and take gender out of these types of arguments. So if there's a female as a victim or a male as a victim, they're individuals first, and their gender or sexuality or race, if you like, are very much secondary issues. So, you know, we want equality for the individual, not specifically because of a gender.
Okay.
It's a stereotype like
I think Mark's idea is great, but it's terribly idealistic, and I don't think that that's the reality. We've seen it with the Amanda Knox case. Yeah, I mean, she has been, I think, crucified by the media in terms of sexism. She's also been, you know, in the Italian media, they've also been terribly racist about her nationality. I think that there was an element there that they wanted to see an American prosecuted, that it was a sort of poor versus rich, and all sorts of other things going on. You know, I admire Mark for his optimism in the way that the justice system works, but I don't think that it actually works that way.
Okay, ultimately, of course, she was acquitted.